So welcome to day, where are we? 1.5 or is it 2.5 of the global conference? I'm sure at this stage all of you are feeling a sense of engagement and excitement about the exposure you've had to new ideas, and this session is going to be a little bit different than some of the other things that you've experienced, because this session is going to be one that's highly interactive. So I want you to get ready to participate. In some of our sessions, we really don't have time for audience questions. This is one where we want the audience, we really want your involvement and engagement, and the terrific younger people to my left will gain value from your perception and your insights and even your poking as they think about how they're going to evolve these terrific businesses they're involved in. So this is about theory to practice, about young social entrepreneurs who are, by the way, from elite business schools, University of Chicago and Kellogg, who are doing the kinds of things that we so admire, not just going off to Wall Street like many of their friends do, but doing some things very intentionally to help make the world a better place. So what's this about? The Milken Institute is a proud supporter of a competition that was created really 3 years ago by my pal Dave Chen to my right, who teaches, among other things, at Kellogg. And it's called the International Impact Investing Challenge, and this is now spread to really all the elite business schools around the world. It's really pretty extraordinary. And so what happens is as those of you who've gone to business school know, there's a business plan competition, except in this case the focus is social enterprise. And students go through a gauntlet of competition, both in their own schools and regionally and then nationally, and I guess now even moving to internationally.
Absolutely.
And then we have winners. This year we're doing something that's a little bit different than what we've done in the past couple of years. This year we have people who are actually through the competition, have been through it for a period of time, and are actually moving forward on their plans. So the goal here is they're doing good stuff, and we want you to help them do their good stuff even more effectively. So to introduce our two teams here, I'm going to introduce you to Dave Chen, who is a terrific social entrepreneur himself and really a leader in the impact investing space. And by the way, just from a sense of timing for the panel, as is the case with all of our panels, about an hour. I think we'll talk probably for on the order of 20-25 minutes up here, and then we're going to open it up. So get ready for questions. Dave.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and first of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize a couple of great supporters of the International Impact Investing Challenge, and that would be the Milken Institute itself. They were right there at the very beginning when this competition took place, and then in the back of the room there, Ron Cordes. Ron's foundation has been a great supporter of this, and we wouldn't be here without you folks. I thought what I'd do is take a few minutes here and just maybe set a little bit of contexting and add a little color to what Paul said, and that is that this competition started 3 years ago, and in a very odd way it came out of the class that I taught at Kellogg. And I want to tone something that Paul said, and that is that a lot of the work in social enterprise and social entrepreneurship at the business school involves products. It involves innovation about building companies that do things, and the kind of things that we're all used to. One of the things that I saw as a result of the class that I taught, and the class that I taught is about impact investing, the mechanics of putting dollars to work in an impact investing way. We look across the entire asset category, and we treat the class and we teach the class about what's different about investing, the things that we talk about here at this conference, investing with impact. And so one of the projects that I asked my students to do the first year was to create their own financial instrument. Not a social enterprise, but a fund, a strategy, an investment. And if you think about it, how many of you went to business school? All right. One of the most important classes, everybody in a business school took the finance class. Many of you went on to take classes in investing. And one of the functions or the areas in a business school that I felt was a little bit neglected in this whole social conversation was the act of investing itself, the finance group. And so the International Impact Investing Challenge is about asking student teams to act as investors, to use their financial creativity and financial innovation. You know, in the 2008 era, that may not be the greatest concept, but to use their financial innovation to come up with investment strategies that can make a difference and generate a rate of return. You know, again, basically everything that goes on here in the conversation at the global conference. And so we started this in 2011. And we were very, very fortunate to get J.P. Morgan to lead off the sponsorship. We did it in New York. The second year, we had the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank help us out, and we did it in San Francisco. This last week, we did it at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. And we've also expanded the participation all throughout the process. The first year, we started with 12 business schools. The second year, we ended up with about 20 business schools. And this last year, we brought on INSEAD in Europe as our permanent partner with Kellogg around the IIIC. And this year, we're very proud that we had 32 schools, 32 schools, of which 12 of the schools were non-US, the international programs. I think actually what's even more impressive is we winnowed all these schools down to 12. And this year, of the 12 teams, we had a team from Singapore, a team from Paris, a team from Thailand, and then we had a joint London School of Economics and Yale School of Forestry team, and then the remaining 8 teams came from the U.S. Our objective is, what we observed was that this was a phenomenon that was sweeping across almost every business school. So hopefully that gives you a sense of the International Impact Investing Challenge, very much focused on the finance and the investing discipline. And a not so grand objective that we have is that we hopefully are training the next generation of investors and financial innovators in this genre. So I'm very proud to, we ran into a little bit of a logistics difficulty this year. Historically, we've had the winner of the competition come to this panel and present. This year, because of a logistics issue with the World Bank, the competition was last Friday, and we couldn't get the team here and prepped. And so what we decided to do
All the hotel rooms were booked.
All the hotel rooms were booked. Flights would have cost thousands of dollars, and they would probably have to go out of school. So what we did this year was ask 2 alumni teams from last year that actually graduated and decided to give it a go. So they're going to do one of the hardest things that you all know in this room to do, and that is build a new financial instrument, build a new fund, fundraise, and actually put a strategy in place. I know you've got the scar tissue on your back. So we have 2 teams, one from the University of Chicago, and they went after one of the holy grails of financial instruments in the last 4 or 5 years, and that is the energy efficiency finance. Everybody knows that energy efficiency is a huge marketplace, a huge opportunity. No one has actually figured out how to finance it appropriately, how to incentivize the marketplace. They went about and went after that very, very difficult problem. As I have said, many have tried, all have failed. And so they've got a great start on that. The team at the far end is from Kellogg, UpSkill Capital, and my shorthand is that they're trying to create the Sally Mae of India for the vocational training, and that is to bring a tuition loan program to India, and the structuring of those loans and the repayment of those loans. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to them. They've been asked to really just give quick updates on where they are from the time that they came up with these proposals, what they've done for the year, and then we'll open it up for questions.
So the first
take it away?
The first is UpSkill. Names?
All right.
You got to introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon from my side. My name is Tobias Schimmer. I'm a co-founder at UpSkill Capital, and I'm here together with my colleague, Kathleen Schindler.
Hi, everybody.
And I'm going to try to show you how we drive our mission of lifting young adults out of poverty through educational lending. So most of you probably have gone to university and have invested in your own education, So you know that education is actually the base of reaching your own, increasing your own labor productivity, and what comes with that is increased salary and all the positive benefits, trickle-down effects, and so on and so forth. On a macroeconomic level, you have the same for economy. So depending on the human capital and the level of human capital within an economy, that directly drives and affects the growth of an economy. And what you see in India, and that brings me to the next slide, is
Oh, there we go.
okay, here we go. India is actually facing currently a huge shortage in entry-level skilled labor. So the Reserve Bank in India has done a study and has estimated that until 2022, they will need about 500 million of skilled workers. The problem is that with the current training infrastructure that they have in place, they will only be able to cater for about 50 million of those 500, leaving a gap of about 450 million of untrained or trained workers that they need, but they can't provide with the infrastructure. We already see that that's a problem in the market nowadays. So I had a discussion with G.R. Venkatesh. He's the HR head of Future Group, one of the largest retail conglomerates in India, heading about 35,000, 40,000 employees. And he's saying it's hindering his growth because he can't find entry-level employees, find and retain entry-level employees. Now the government has tried to intervene and has founded what you can see in the middle bracket, the Industrial Training Institutes. The problem is that there's a huge disconnect between the curriculum that they have designed and what's actually needed in the market. So the people that graduate from those industrial training institutes can't really get a job. I've talked to placement officers, and he told me he can place about 10% of the students that go through his program. And then there's NGOs. So schools, mostly mission-driven, small-scale schools. They train about 500,000 students scattered around India that actually provide good quality education, but they face another problem. They spend half their time trying to get funding, donation funding for their school, and they can't really concentrate on their main task, which is actually teaching students. So if you go to the next slide, I want to show you the success story of a student that went through one of those NGOs. Meet Mukesh. He's a 24-year-old guy from Delhi. He grew up in one of the slums. He left school at the age of 10, trying to earn money in day-to-day jobs to support his family income. And he was unsatisfied with the situation at some stage. So he said, I have to do something about this. He enrolled, he got a place with Etasha, which is a school in Delhi that teaches communication skills, proper English, develops the confidence of the students. And after 6 months training, he was able to secure a job that now earns him $144. So he went in 6 months training, he went within his labor productivity from $22, he increased his salary by sixfold to $144 a month within 6 months. So that's a huge gain for him as an individual, but also for society and for everyone around him, for his family. So the problem is that we could have many more Mukeshs, but the NGOs that currently train those people don't have a sustainable funding source to actually fund the training. And this is where we come in. We as UpSkill Capital, we try to be the missing link between the three main stakeholders in the system. So the student, the school, and the corporation. The student obviously has a great incentive to move out of poverty. He can increase his salary by sixfold. I think if any of us could do that in 6 months, we would definitely take up the training, right? The problem is he has no savings, so he can't pay for the tuition up front. Then there's the school, who's mission-driven, who struggles with getting funding for the actual training. So they spend a lot of time actually coming up with donations, and they can't really concentrate on their main task. And then there's the corporations, who want to fulfill their growth trajectory, but have really trouble of finding qualified employees in the market. So we try to bridge the gap between those three stakeholders in providing tuition funding for the student at low risk. We're going to look for the best vocational schools in the country based on performance metrics, like placement rates, like quality of teaching, like already existing corporate partnerships. And then we're going to place the students with our corporate partners, relationships that we already also build up, and try to recollect on the first earnings of the student. And how that, Kathleen will explain you now how that works in detail.
Okay, perfect. So this is kind of a quick snapshot of how our business model actually works. And it's investor driven. So the first step of the process is, we get the capital from our investors, and then we distribute it to our network of vocational schools, and we call them vocational education and training institutes that we've actually done due diligence with. We've looked at their curriculum for the core skills that they're learning in English, but also some life skills like managing money, what a loan actually means, that type of thing. We're also looking at those core KPIs of placement rates and graduation rates. So we let the vocational schools actually go ahead and train the students, and that's step 3 of the process. So they're in their training courses for 3 to 6 months. And after they're done, we place them through our HR operating company that's part of UpSkill with a corporate employer like a Reliance Mart, which is a big box retailer in India. And in the first 6 months of employment, we manage the cash flow between the employer and the student. So we just take a declining percentage of their monthly wage to pay back the cost of their education, and also pay back the investor's principal and the return of in the range of 18 to 22% IRR. And then after those 6 months, those students are able to enjoy the full employment benefits of working for somebody like Reliance Mart. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about our journey over the last year. So it really started, with the IIIC competition, and we realized as a team that this idea actually has legs, and that we wanted to continue it after graduation, because we were done in June, and a lot of us had full-time jobs, but we still wanted to push the needle with this and continue the great work that we'd done in the few last months of school. So a couple of the team members actually went out over the holiday time period to visit some of the schools, meet with employers, do some kind of upfront due diligence and market assessment, and really understand what the appetite is from those schools like Atasha and employers like Big Bazaar and Reliance Mart. So that was really fruitful. And at the same time, we worked with Indiegogo, who spoke here at the conference, I think yesterday, and we did some crowdsourced fundraising. So we leveraged our networks and raised about $25,000, which is actually going to our pilot program, which is starting up right now, and we've been able to bring on an individual that's working for us locally to help us run our pilot. So there's a lot of stuff that we've done internally to get this off the ground, but then the government is also stepping up to the plate, and they're realizing the huge gap that I guess they can see it in front of their faces now. It's kind of alarming. So they've decided to bring in some folks from the private sector to help and work with the Prime Minister's office to really drive some reforms around vocational training. So it's a kind of like the perfect storm for us now in India, where we can actually make an impact. The government's behind the overall initiatives. So our team is very excited about this, and just like to point out, we have a very global team at the moment. It's the same 6 folks that were in Dave Chen's class last year at this time. We're 2 of, there's kind of like 2 on every continent, and we always have a call every Sunday. It's 8 a.m. for me in Boston. It's, somewhere between 10 and midnight for Johan, depending on the time of year in Australia. So we're really driven to kind of continue this mission, and we're actually looking for capital right now for 2 of us to go do this full time on the ground and change the lives of millions of young adults through this vocational training course. Thanks.
Thank you. So before any serious pitches or discussions start with, we want to hear from our second team. So why don't you introduce yourselves?
Great, thanks. All right. So I'm Claire Tramm, the CEO and co-founder of Effortless Energy, and this is my co-founder Matt. He's our CTO. And as you can see, we make home energy efficiency the no-brainer that it ought to be. And we, I think it's. control has gone back to the original computer operator here. There we go. Great. So what we've done is with Effortless Energy is create a market for home energy efficiency investing. We're providing homeowners what we think is a better financial value proposition and a better value proposition than even home solar, which has blown up in the last few years. And we're bringing contractors, utilities, and financiers into this equation in a way that not all their incentives have been aligned thus far. So the idea for this business originally came from the McKinsey carbon cost curve, which is actually a study I worked on while I was at McKinsey, and it's sort of complex, so I'll break it down more stylistically. But basically, we just took a look at all the ways you could abate carbon in the world if we actually got serious and wanted to solve or slow climate change. How would we do that, and what would it cost us? And so we lined everything up from left to right according to how expensive it would be to actually abate a ton of carbon. And what we found, to our sort of great surprise, is that there are some things where there is no trade-off between sustainability and our bank accounts. These things on the left side of the curve are actually win-wins. They both save money and carbon. And one of these, home energy efficiency, is the one we're focused on. And it stands in contrast to solar energy at the far end of the cost curve, which in the last 5 years has grown into, I believe, a $12 billion investment industry. And with folks like Solar City, Elon Musk spoke about their endeavor last night. Sunrun and Clean Power Finance have been very successful in all slightly different models of opening up that market. But what's interesting about energy efficiency is that in addition to not requiring the sort of policy support and the sort of subsidies that solar needs just inherently to grow, it also has a more attractive value proposition for homeowners themselves. So in addition to all the green smiley benefits that also solar has, energy efficiency actually makes your home more comfortable. It makes the air quality better and therefore improves your health, and it actually can improve your control over your home. So for instance, a Nest thermostat you can actually program, you can control remotely. That sense of control is very attractive to homeowners. One of the homeowners we have been working with in the last few months, I kid you not, her name is Suzanne Carbon. And this is her house in Chicago. It's a historic Chicago bungalow. We're actually partnered with the Historic Chicago Bungalow Association to expand there. And Suzanne's interested in energy efficiency because she has a monthly utility bill, electric and gas, that she's currently paying. And she's interested in installing energy efficiency measures, things like insulation, air sealing, and a Nest thermostat, which are going to cost her over $2,000, but will actually create an energy savings annuity by bringing her bills down and sustaining that savings over time. But that energy savings annuity is going to take about 6 years to pay her back for her upfront investment, which is not very attractive to most residents who have what economists have approximated about a 40% discount rate on those future cash flows. So that's not all that attractive to her at the current time. And then in addition to that over $2,000 she's got to spend on the actual equipment and upgrades, she'll have to find an energy auditor that she trusts and pay them because, of course, she's not a home energy efficiency expert, and she's got to trust someone else to scope that opportunity. And also she'll potentially have to find a financier that will give her a loan, or she'll have to find the state, the utility, the federal, the local grants that go into this, which is kind of a nightmare. They have start and end dates, they expire. There's a lot of paperwork required for all this. And then the financing is really an interesting problem, and as Dave mentioned, sort of the holy grail here. The financing options today currently can't be transferred from one homeowner to the next very easily, or at all. And so that makes that 40% discount rate that she has on those future cash flows quite actually rational, because she can't really predict whether she's going to be in that home after 2 years. So that's a major problem, and as a result, not a lot of this is getting done, and you see this massive, no-brainer, cost-effective, attractive opportunity just sitting on the floor. And so what we are doing at Effortless Energy is solving this problem through starting with tackling that finance question first. And then we've created a business entity, Effortless Energy, to conduct the project finance funds into these investments. So what we do is we pay for those upgrades ourselves, and then we use the energy savings annuity to pay investors back and share that annuity with Suzanne. We are basically just charging Suzanne every month. If we double click on the months before and after we install a home energy efficiency service agreement in her home, we are basically just charging her for exactly the amount that she's saving. So it's an energy savings guarantee that doesn't exist anywhere else in the market, and presents yet another risk and a hassle when you're trying to figure out whether to take out a loan or not for something like this. And so she can take a cut of that savings over time, or she can actually choose to take a sign-up bonus, which is sort of a discounted NPV of the future stream of savings. So it's really good for investors. It's also good for homeowners if you have a high discount rate. And then, of course, at the end of the 10 to 15-year contract, she gets to keep the perpetuity of savings. And this contract has a number of advantageous aspects. Number one, I mentioned the energy savings are guaranteed. And we can also add it straight to the utility bill in several states. And it can stay with the home. It can be transferred from one homeowner to the next, just like the Solar City contracts can be, those leases that have really opened up the home solar space. And it can be paid off also at any time, at which point the value is capitalized into the home. There was a great study last year by Matt Kahn at UCLA here in LA showing that this is reliably capitalized by up to 14% into the value of the home if you have that ENERGY STAR rating, probably because it's a very recognizable international brand. For investors, this kind of an investment can generate a 12% pretty stable IRR. Mimics what's been very successful in opening up the home solar market with a solar lease and the commercial energy efficiency market with folks like Metris and Transcend. So we're sort of the first mover in the residential energy efficiency space. It's a huge market. It's spread over a lot of households, so you've got to get volume on this stuff. But it's a $230 billion cost-effective market, according to a McKinsey study, which I actually helped work on, just focusing on the energy efficiency part of the cost curve. And it's spread across the United States. We understand sort of the efficiency measure by measure at a household level across the United States, and that's what our models take into account. And so we're focusing right now on raising our first sort of 100K pilot fund, and then eventually we'd like to get to a sort of $30 to $50 million fund to be able to do this. And so right now we're working with project, actually crowdsourced finance lenders called LendSquare, and other institutional and other banks that are interested in potentially being a part of that scale up. So I'll hand it off to Matt now, who will tell you a little bit more about how the Effortless Energy business then makes money by facilitating those capital flows.
Great, yeah. So this panel is about turning theory into practice, and that's kind of the theory of our business. And so I'll just very quickly tell you a little about what we've done in the last year and how we've tried to monetize this. And you've already started enough slides, so I'm going to try to don't worry too much about what's up there. Right? So we've really focused on our core business. Essentially, is building the platform, the financing platform. Actually, fairly similar to Clean Power Finance, but for energy efficiency. So we've built a platform that integrates the ability to properly quantify and price the savings risk for any particular home. And we've been demoing this with a couple of contracting partners in the city of Chicago, DNR Construction, the largest, and Sealed, Smart Sealed, the smartest. And they've been really pleased. And there are a lot of contractors just like them across the country, so we're excited to partner with more. The main thing I want to hit on is not all these extra things about our iPad application, but why it is that now is the right time to be doing this. So I think Dave rightly pointed out many have tried, all have failed in the home energy efficiency space. And And there are a couple of interesting and important technological changes that have kind of emerged in the last few years that make it different this time around. And I want to highlight three. One is big open data. And what I mean by big open data is in order to properly quantify the risk of and the opportunity for savings in a particular home, you need to almost be able to peer inside the home and know how they're using energy, how much energy it's going to use, and how much you might be able to save if you add insulation, if you do air sealing. And that's usually a very expensive thing to do. You actually need to send someone into the home, an auditor, to do this. But thanks to great work by the DOE, who we've partnered with, and some folks at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, they've put together a massive database called the Building Performance Database that allows us to, in combination with this data and the energy use data from the home that comes from things like smart meters, be able to accurately predict the potential energy savings from the home without ever having to go there. So we can actually screen out the homes that are going to be most profitable. The second is remote sensing and smart meters, net thermostats, anything net connected, the Internet of Things. This second component is critical to getting the modeling and validation right on the back end. And that technology allows us kind of secondarily to properly pass on and confirm the energy savings to the homeowner and price the energy risk for ourselves. And the third is actually, as Claire mentioned, crowdfunding. This has allowed us to allow individuals to invest back into the energy efficiency of the community. So we've actually created community energy efficiency funds that have this financial product as the backing, that allow people like you to invest in the energy efficiency of the homes that surround you and really feel like you're contributing back. So we're really thrilled to have the partners we have. We've droned on long enough, so let's maybe open it up for questions.
I'm thinking about investing in the energy efficiency of my neighborhood, but you don't know my neighbors.
You'd be surprised how well we know them with just the data that's available.
You probably do. So again, the purpose of this is to have a conversation, not just a conversation up here, but a conversation with you, which could be as specific as any element of their plan, or as broad as how does it feel to be just at a B school hustling money through funding. So does anybody want to start? Anybody have a question? Andrew Tyndale.
I'd like to ask each team what you think your biggest risk going forward is.
You guys want to start?
So I think our biggest risk is, once we have people on the ground is actually, when we test our model out, understanding kind of what the components of our model is, the student actually goes through the training program, completes it, and goes into the 6 month or first 6 months of work and stays with us and doesn't disappear. So I think for us, one of the biggest risks, I guess, is the default risk, and that's a little bit of an unknown for us. It all depends on the partners we pick in terms of the vocational schools, but I think that's still a relatively big question mark for us. But we'll find out an indicator of that in our pilot. But then once we expand to more schools, I think that's our biggest challenge.
I'm actually curious. How do you underwrite the vocational schools in India? Is it a question of kind of outputs? In other words, their employment data and stuff like that, or is there an accrediting system? Or
yeah. So the way we've thought it out is that we would provide them funding for one batch of students, then see how they do, so how the placements rates are, how the graduation rates are within that batch of students, and then based on that performance, decide whether we fund them again in the next cycle. And obviously, before we have any experience with them, we would do the due diligence. So we'd ask them to come up with those numbers.
Sure.
Yeah, it happens that I was part of a group that did.
Let's give you a mic. We want to capture these questions. Thanks.
That did a set of studies about apprenticeship for the Indian government and for the Indian apprenticeship. And it seems to me that one way of reducing the risk would be to try a little more with the apprenticeship model, where they're placed at the same time as they're also taking the courses. And at least in other examples, you can see that the recoupment by the employers occurs over the apprenticeship period itself. It would also allow you to have a bit longer and more in-depth set of training that could really work well. And finally, the matching. I mean, if somebody's in school for quite a while, and then they go to this company, maybe they hate it, or maybe they just don't know how to get along with people at the work site. And what happens is the employer is not happy, and you lose. I mean, you still will get most of them through. I suspect you're right, but I think if you combine it with an apprenticeship model, you might lower the risk and increase the benefits.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's actually an idea we're thinking about already. So in the talks we had with Future Group, I mean, they have a very specific profile of skills they need. And so we thought of having a model where the student spends like 3 days a week at the school and then 2 days of the week already at the employer. So that would have the advantage that the student already knows when he enters the program, what kind of job am I going to get into? And he also is going to get an early feel of what that job's like. Because, I mean, these people come from the informal sector, so they're not used to going to work every day, right? And I think that's a very good point, and that's also a model we are exploring.
So, hello, my name is Candace Klein, and I spoke on the crowdfunding panel yesterday, so I was very happy to hear crowdfunding be such a big part of both of your business models. Congratulations on that. First, I also want to congratulate Effortless Energy on talking about your business model. This is impact investing. So a question I have first for UpSkill is, how do you make money? I understand the model, there was a nice flow chart about how you get the money back, but are you charging interest? How are you making money on your investment?
So the way it's working, if you take kind of the model where Tobias was talking about, going from $22 to like an average salary of about $140 when they come out of their training course, we'll take, I think we start about 35% in their first month wage that we take, and we use that to pay back the principal and the investor's return. So it's a declining percentage from 1 to 6 months. And then I think the 6 month is about 10%, which more than pays back the cost of their education and is able to generate that return.
And this is a human capital contract model, which is now being used in various other places.
And just a follow-up question, I hope you don't mind, and this is for both of you. You had mentioned at UpSkill that you are seeking capital now, that you are seeking some money to send some people. How much money? You do have some investors in the room, and so I'd be curious if both of you are seeking money. I think I encourage you to articulate what you're seeking the money for, and how it's going to be used and how much money you're looking for.
Do you want to throw that number out there?
Well, so we're currently already talking to investors in India. So there's individuals that are, highly motivated to make the sector work because it's a personal interest. And as I said, at the moment, none of the 6 that you saw on the slide is doing it full time. And we obviously see that that's a big bottleneck. So we are now seeking for the funds to enable 2 of us to go down there and do it full time. And we just started talking to investors, and we did a first estimation how much money we would need for the first 3 years of operations of UpSkill. So that money would be needed to run UpSkill Capital would not be.
Just don't be shy.
So it's $1.5 million that we estimated to run like 2 people plus team to scale up the business.
Say it about 100 times and you'll feel more comfortable.
So ours, our about 60th slide was the ask. So that's probably why.
Gotta cut that one out there.
But we're seeking in 2 places, and so maybe I can talk about the fund, you can talk about the business.
Sure.
So one is we're actually, in addition to the crowdfunding, we're actually looking for investors in the project finance fund. And that we estimate about $5,000 per home. We'd like to do we'd like to do them in chunks of around 200 homes. So we're looking for $1 million and for a community energy efficiency fund. And then
after that, the idea is to get people that are interested in then potentially coming in follow-on rounds of the 30 to 50 million, where we would move that out the door very quickly as we scale up. But we'd like to do a pilot round very soon. So
So I'm curious about reaction. So the UpSkill folks said they're having some conversations in India. What's been the reaction based on the anticipated internal rate of return, risks, et cetera? What are people saying to you when you get into the room?
yeah, so I think people are very interested. Of course, the crowdfunding sort of investment community is very, very excited. It's the same sort of model that Solar Mosaic has taken, and they've I think channeled several $1 million now into solar. So we have that sort of base group of investors that's very excited. And then the institutional investors, I think one of the things that UpSkill talked about was the default risk. And I think with any sort of new financial product, right, we've designed a new contract structure called the Home Energy Efficiency Services Agreement. And with any new contract structure, I think, the key, you have a cold start problem. And the key for us is getting folks to understand and be comfortable with the amalgamated data sets that we're using to model and project that risk. So that's the hurdle. And I think for us, I mean, to your point earlier about building the business to do the impact investing, that's been the transition and the difficult point for us. We started working on this more or less full time last fall, then after the impact investing challenge last spring. And we've put together all the things that Effortless Energy needs to be that platform. But we now actually need to raise the funds to go channel those in. But it's a chicken and the egg problem. You need both. You need both the actual business model and the ability to do that, and then the capital. So that's why we're raising now.
Did you comment?
Yeah, let me ask a couple of questions, and that is just really quick, and please don't justify this, okay? What's the IRR target?
18.
Yours?
12.
Okay, so these would not be numbers that we would historically associate with quote-unquote impact investing. Just a couple of questions. One is, how can you justify that? And two, do you feel like there's are you gouging? Is this the antithesis of social and community returns?
Something tells me Dave Chen's being rhetorical here. I don't know why.
Yeah,
No, but
maybe
you know,
you
but I
want to
think,
answer it,
but these, but these are core issues.
Professor
and-
Chen,
Yeah.
why are you
But
asking
that's all
this
right.
question?
It's just part of the Socratic effort.
Yeah. Well, it's the risk-rated return, right? So especially when we're dealing with a new sort of asset class, we think this is fair, and then also the life of these contracts being an illiquid, high-yield sort of asset, really need to be able, as we were talking about earlier, they need to have enough of a yield to buffer against rising treasuries in the longer term. So these have to be something that is attractive to investors over a longer period of time, because there isn't a massitive securitized market for these things.
And to add
So
on
can I just follow with a question for you two particularly? So 12% certainly not a typical alternatives target, right? So it clearly is an impact. Well,
no, I'm
maybe-
going to make an
maybe these
argument.
days. Okay.
Well, no, but think about this. So let's abstract this for a second. Let's not talk about this as home efficiency. Let's talk about this as a lease portfolio. All right, what would you expect a lease portfolio to yield for you? It's an alt asset, but
Fair
what would a
enough.
lease portfolio?
Fair enough. My question is who do you think the investor is? The investors are. Is it individuals? Is it foundations looking for return? PRI kind of money? Is it socially conscious investors of some kind? Who's gonna write the
interestingly
check?
enough, we have talked to all of those folks, and all of them have said, we'll write a check when you get to X number of homes.
Right.
It's the cold start.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
the reason why we started with crowdfunding is because individuals, right? In the crowdfunding space, they're much more willing to take bets and experiment. And so that's how we're going to get to the 100, and then the 1,000 that the PRI folks have said, and then the 10,000. So we know what our path is, but getting those first 1,000 is challenging.
Can you guys address the 18%?
So, I mean, it's simply built off our model is, and we did a sensitivity analysis around it, driven off, we thought it was a conservative 25% default rate, given that, a few of the schools that we were partnering with initially had graduation rates of 90+%. So we said 25% default, and then the average of, $140 a month gave us that 18% IRR. And it can be, if our default rate drops by about 5%, it's going to be upwards of 25%. So it all depends on the schools and the appetite of the employers for these students.
I have a somewhat different question for you two. So I remember a couple of years ago, Dave, we had a team that was doing grain wheat silos in India. And one of the responses was we actually had a couple people in the audience who had invested in India. They talked about context. So they talked about Western. Interestingly, both of the students, as I recall, were of Indian background, but both of them had been raised in the United States. And somebody was pushing back in the audience and saying, "Do you actually know how hard it is to start a business in India? Do you have a local partner? Do you understand the cultural norms? Have you taken into account political sensitivities and various other particular challenges that exist in India?" So I'm obviously very different when you're doing home rehabs in Chicago.
Yeah. I think a big advantage we have is Apar. So he's a member of our team. He's based in Mumbai. He's Indian. He went to business school with us, and he has a great network there. I mean, through that network, we have been able to meet like the HR heads of multiple really big companies. We have met lawyers that advise us for free on the company structure and all those things. So obviously it's going to be hard, but I think we have a great network there to be able to handle that.
Okay.
Question in the far back.
Question far back. Let's go all the way back. Then we'll come back up front.
Just a question on your impact. So for my $1 million investment in my 18% return or my $12 million return, how much carbon do I save? How many people do I employ, et cetera? I mean, what's the impact metrics? I can see the financial metrics, and those are David's view on the interest rates in the lease portfolio. I'm not convinced on the impact nature of it, being involved with a food security nutrition impact fund myself, amongst other things in impact space. But I'm just kind of curious about what are the metrics, I mean, that you're measuring this by, the first $1 million and the next 10 million.
Yeah. So the training for one student costs around $150. So meaning if you invest $1 million, I mean that's $1 million divided by 150. I don't know what it works out, but it's quite a big impact on a big community that you will have.
So we should note that while at University of Chicago, Claire and I also started something called the Center for Impact Measurement. We take impact measurement really seriously, and one of the great things we love about the business is that measuring it is actually core to the business working well. We need to know precisely what the savings are in perpetuity in order to kind of adjust payments. So one of the things that we are able to give both investors and the homeowner is precise measurement of how much carbon was abated as a result of these interventions, and we think that's pretty great.
Mm-hmm. And jobs created, and I think too, if you kind of take a step up, both of our endeavors are trying to generate, catalyze a larger transformation, which I think what's really interesting is thinking about impact investing not just as, it's sort of how Elon Musk phrased it last night, it's the opportunity to fix a problem by fixing the market for solving that problem. And so that's really the level at which we think about our impact on the longer term scale, not just how many tons of carbon do we abate this year versus next year, but can this actually be a model that scales not just to the US but abroad as well.
We had a question up here, then we'll come back.
Firstly, I want to say well done and actually going out and doing it. Setting up a fund is the hardest thing you can do until you start raising money, and then you realize it's really hard work. Can I ask you, when I thought your business model was really interesting, how do you focus this as a energy saving model or a money saving model?
You mean in how we talk to homeowners about it?
Yes.
So that's really a great question, and it's packed with a kind of long response and a lot of research on that question. So I'll try and summarize, but what we found is that people respond most to the home comfort, so the draftiness or it's too hot and cold in this space and that. The home comfort, home control, those are really the most attractive things, and then of course home value. This is a way, if we have an Energy Star label on your home now that goes on the MLS, that is a piece of paper that transfers with your deed. That is, I think, very attractive to people as well, that we're starting to see others in the market recognize the value of this. So all of those put together, I think, are really what we're selling. And we sell less the energy savings, because why does anyone care about saving energy inherently, right? Unless one's thinking about these very large collective problems. And then also, again, with a 40% average discount rate of future savings, very few people care about the savings either. So we've designed this, as I mentioned, to be able to offer, instead of that stream of savings, a several $100 upfront bonus. And then having people pay what they would have been paying for their total energy usage otherwise. So that's really what drives the sales, and that's what we're seeing, really big incremental uptake deltas in our customer surveys.
We have a question. Let's go back
Can I
there.
just have one follow-up?
Quick. Sure.
Have you looked at how a tax equity plan could work for this product? People like One Roof Energy and Solar City and Sunrun are starting to build these big tax equity flip models. Could that work within the residential efficiency model?
Totally. I mean, it's a capital asset, and it can be held by some other party. So yes, it could be a great opportunity for our government to support this, not just solar.
Thank you. There's with both groups, there were two sources of financing which occurred to me, but I didn't hear any discussion of them. One, if I focus on the electricity savings area, I come from the Boston area, and some of the utilities there in the Boston area are actually doing some energy financing in order to cut the amount of capacity. So the two things that they're looking to do is to cut the total capacity that they have to install, and secondly, to put in smart meters so that they can truncate the peaks in these powers. And if you have installed already in the house these smart meters, it strikes me that in certain parts, for some utilities, not for all utilities, you may have a natural financer. They're an interested party who could do that. And it may be that simply others who are interested, and I know there are some of the utilities are interested in developing things like this and might be open to that level of financing as kind of a seed round. I don't know who they are, but they're just kind of thinking out loud. But I didn't hear a discussion of that. And if I focus now over on the subject in India, there are two other groups there that might be of interest in terms of providing the capital. First are the corporations that that recognize, somebody's recognized already that they've got the ability to train 50 million people and they need 500 million people. Well, I know in the U.S. that some of the companies in the U.S. in the scientific area have financed these things. Now, this is obviously an entirely different area, but the two are either the companies or the governments, either within the localities or more likely the federal governments are potential sources of revenue. So I wondered if you could just discuss what the thinking was there.
Let's just do it very quickly because we want to get one more question in, which we're closing in. So
okay.
First.
So the government has actually already responded in that way. So they've brought out a new policy in the next 2 years. They're going to give out 10,000 rupees to each student that completes a certified vocational training. And now, obviously, the question for us is how can you get certified? Do we extend down the value chain of offering the school also a certified training curriculum for the key professions that we think have potential of employing people? And then on the employer side, I think what we see also is that many employers actually have agencies that they employ to look for people, and that they pay quite a big amount of money if they find them employees. And that's why we are also discussing with them whether there could be something like a placement fee to us to pay a part of the deal.
And then to speak to the utility incentives and partnerships, it's another part we had at the end. But basically, there's tons of opportunities for partnering with utilities. They have energy efficiency portfolio standards that they have to meet, which is what we're defining as traditional energy efficiency. It's the sort of infrastructural upgrade that's getting you sustained periods of energy savings, not necessarily instantaneous responses to the overall grid demand or energy prices. And then that second bucket of demand response is something that both utilities and then regional transmission organizations are starting to pay for. And the Nest thermostat has actually, I think, made a very good move in starting to roll out that sort of demand, very easy to participate in demand response with their thermostat that then controls and enables people to play in that. So that's a very clear partner for us is the sort of demand response enabled thermostat and smart grid partners. And utilities are very excited. They already have a lot of program administration partners in this space. So we've been meeting with a lot of them because we think we have a clear value proposition in how to make their lives easier, make sure that they meet their cost effectiveness targets, et cetera. The one thing I would say that most state public utility commissions could do to help this model is push through their legislatures on bill repayment. And second, to make sure that they've defined the cost effectiveness of the energy efficiency in the best sense possible. So not just have an electricity company running its own programs and a gas company running its own, but where we're saving both electricity and natural gas with a single set of CapEx investments to allow us to count those and to incentivize the two different types of utility companies to cooperate. I think that would be very, very helpful.
So I think, unfortunately, believe it or not, we're actually just about at an end. So Dave, once you go, and then I have a quick close. So
one of the things I just wanted to make sure that, first of all, these are two great teams. They all placed extremely well in the 2012 competition. But what I wanted to emphasize is that they were two of perhaps now 100 teams that have entered this competition, all offering up innovations with some sort of an investment idea, some way of using a financial instrument, and it's tremendously exciting to see a group of young MBAs that are thinking through how they can use their finance degree in a very different way, creating financial instruments and investment ideas in very different ways, and we're just seeing this incredible groundswell, and it is really an international issue, and it is across all of our top business schools, and what we're also now starting to see is in each of these schools increasing curriculum about how to encourage this, mentor this, as well as actual coursework in this area.
So I would encourage any or all of you to continue the discussion after our session is done. You're welcome to rush the stage, and they're welcome to rush down. And just kind of an editorial comment. I think one of the things that we're interested in, obviously we had a terrific presentation by the Musk brothers last night, and we appreciate all of you coming today. All of us are interested in growth, and we're interested in job creation, innovation, et cetera. I think one of the things that it's incumbent on all of us who are a few years beyond the folks to my left is to look for ways that enable business students to take on these kinds of challenges, these kinds of opportunities, and not just take the predictable path, because we know that innovation is the thing that really creates growth, jobs, and good change in the world. So congratulations to the four of you for pursuing it, and it's a challenge for all of us to try to ensure that more can do this. Thanks very much.